All right, it's 1 o'clock. How's everybody doing out there? Welcome to this third scheme rewind that we're doing in the 2019 season. Today we're looking at one of the first Pac-12 games of the season, where the Cal Bears traveled up to Seattle to take on the Washington Huskies. This was a weird game. There was a bizarre rain delay not that long into the game. It ended up finishing really late at night, and Cal barely pulled off the win with a last-second field goal. So this is really exciting. We got a lot of really cool scheme stuff to talk about with you here today. I'm gonna change around the layout of the live cast if you've seen any of the previous two. Instead of just going in a strictly chronological order, for the first quarter or so, I'm going to do it more thematically. We're going to introduce some concepts relating to scheme and strategy that'll be important throughout the rest of the live cast. So we'll start off, we'll introduce those key concepts that'll help us understand critical drives and critical plays later in the game. And then once we've kind of gotten into things a little bit, we'll switch to a more chronological model and track the game as it developed, especially toward the end when things got really exciting. So first of all, just real quick, is there anyone out there who could confirm for me that they're getting my audio? Actually, I just confirmed it for myself. I've got the live cast up on another screen. Okay, so we are good to go. Let's start off with this first play. Once again, this is going to be kind of a thematic introduction. So I'm going to start off by looking at a few plays of Cal's offense versus Washington's defense, kind of laying out the basic matchup here. So here, Cal's obviously backed up. They're in an empty set. And what I really want to focus on here is talking about Washington's defense and some of the stuff that makes them incredibly cool. So Washington's defense, even when it looks like they're doing the same thing over a course of a game, you're actually getting a lot of different looks and a lot of different things that you have to think about and try to defeat. So the key features that we're going to see here are that Washington's playing a single high coverage. So they've got a safety playing in the deep middle of the field, and it really looks like they're manned up everywhere out on the edges. The thing that's going to be really interesting here, and that we're going to be able to contrast with other plays, is that on this play, Washington's playing this single high coverage, but the thing that they're doing that makes things a little bit tricky for Cal is that they're just bringing a three-man rush. So if we look right here, they've got what looks like two down linemen and then one linebacker kind of walked up over the center. Those are going to be the three guys that they bring. And what they're going to do, though, is they're going to take these outside linebackers who you'd normally think about being involved in the pass rush. You know, if you're Cal's offensive tackles, you're definitely thinking those are the guys that you have to block. And they're going to drop those guys out to take away any quick inside breaking routes. And this is just one of many things that Washington does out of these single high coverages. So let's take a look at this. We're keeping an eye on these outside linebackers and the structure that they give to this defense. So there we go. Cal motions their running back into the backfield. And here we go. All right, so there it is. We see the three pass rushers getting after the quarterback, and then we see that both of these outside linebackers have dropped out. And the key here, and why that's kind of interesting, is let's look at the pass play that Cal's running. So if you look down here at the bottom of the screen, if you're Chase Garbers, Cal's quarterback, you might be thinking that if this outside linebacker is going to rush, if he's going to be coming after the quarterback, then you might be able to sneak this running back out into the flat. So we see right here that Cal's releasing this running back. They're hoping that they can get him out in the flat uncovered. But when Washington drops out this outside linebacker, this kind of traditional pass rusher, that's going to take away any potential that they have to do that. And we see something similar up here at the top of the screen. When Washington drops out their outside linebacker up here, that's going to put him underneath any inside breaking routes by this inside trips receiver right here. So it's kind of an interesting structure. Washington here, you know, they're kind of vacating the middle of the field a little bit. They're leaving the middle pretty open, but they're choosing instead to drop out these outside linebackers and to take away either these quick routes into the flat to Cal's running backs or these quick inside breaking routes like slants that are coming from the top of the screen. And this is just one way that Washington has to get into a single high coverage and to play that way. We'll talk more about this over the course of this warm-up. So if you're Cal and you're facing this kind of defense, then what do you need to do? Well, as I said, Washington, in order to get this help on the outside here, they are vacating the middle a little bit. And so what Cal wanted to do a lot in this game, kind of setting up the basic passing game matchup, is they wanted to get their inside receivers open into that vacated middle. So here they're going to try to bring this number 3 receiver on a crossing route. Garbers is going to target him. This ends up drawing a pass interference, but you can see the basic plan of attack. I can actually put that in slow motion so we can get a better look at it. We're watching this inside receiver up here. So there he goes. He really, well, let's see here. It's not starting. There we go. Okay, so here we go. There's the snap. Watch that inside receiver. He breaks inside into that space that Washington's kind of vacating in between those two dropping outside linebackers. He ends up drawing the pass interference. So that's the one of the basic matchups that Cal's looking to exploit here. They're looking to target that space over the middle. Once they're able to clear those outside linebackers who are dropping as help players. So that's something that we'll want to keep an eye on throughout this game. I will say, I don't think that Cal ever completed one of these passes. So that was kind of a problem of execution in the passing game. Here they drew that pass interference, but they really were never able to get this going. And that's part of the reason that their passing game struggled so much in this game. All right, so that kind of sets up the basic looks that Cal's seeing from Washington. Let's move now to another play that can give us a little bit more. Okay, I'm going to get this back to the start here. Okay, Good. So on this play, we're seeing another one of those single high looks from Washington. So we just saw one where they bailed out the outside linebackers to give him help against either routes in the flat or quick inside breaking routes. Here we're seeing something that's totally different. On the last play, we saw that Cal was able to target the middle of the field because Washington was vacating it. Here we're seeing the exact opposite not many plays later. So let's check out what the Huskies are doing here. All right, notice on this play, they're bringing those rushers off the edge. So we see them attacking the offensive tackles here, and they're dropping their inside linebackers underneath right into that area that we saw Cal trying to target. This is going to be a great coverage to take away what Cal's running here. This is a nice play call by Jimmy Lake. So let's take a look at what Cal is running here. They're running a play called, I'd call it H drive, or maybe drive coming from the slot. So on a drive concept, what you're going to get is you're going to get this tight end. He's going to run a 10-yard dig or something like that, and then they're going to bring this slot receiver underneath of him. And the goal is they want to get these linebackers dropping out to take away that tight end dig route so that they can then throw this crossing route underneath of it. But as we see here, Washington's going to do a really nice job of taking away both of those things. So notice here how this linebacker is able to drop out, get underneath that tight end dig, okay? And then as this shallow comes across from the slot, this drive part of the concept, number 4 here, Washington in their zone coverage with those linebackers dropping in the middle of the field, with this nickel back dropping outside, there's not really going to be any space for either of those routes to go. Garbers is going to have to scramble out and just take what he can get on the edge. So really cool thing here, Washington still playing this single high coverage structure. There's still just one safety in the deep middle of the field, but now the guys that they're dropping out are changing. They're no longer dropping out the outside linebackers. They're dropping the inside linebackers, changing the parts of the field that are vulnerable and making it tough for Cal to get a good kind of rhythm passing game going. Really cool stuff from the Huskies on this play. And that's kind of the matchup that was going throughout this game. Let's take a look at 11:47 in the first to get a sense for what else Cal might have been targeting here. Okay, actually this is 11:47 in the second. So on this play, we're going to see what Cal, if they weren't able to get the passing game going over the middle, as I've kind of shown on the last 2 plays, the other place that they were able to get the passing game going, or trying to, is out here on the edges, where Washington really loved to play press. We see they're playing either a press or kind of a softer press almost across the board. Remember, Washington loves to play single high coverages. They've just got that one safety in the deep middle. And so what Cal wants to do, if they can't attack the middle, is they want to exploit these one-on-one passing game matchups out on the edge. So here we see they're going to target this guy against the press, and it's not going to work out for him. Okay, my video is a little bit screwed up there, but we might be able to see the replay. All right, there we go. There it is. Okay, so a lot of Cal's passing game looked like this, unfortunately, for the Bears, trying to get that stuff open down the sidelines and just not executing at a high level. So here we see, the wide receiver's jammed up a little bit, the ball's a little bit behind him, it's out of bounds. There's just not a lot there. So Cal couldn't really attack the middle, even though that's where they had room schematically, probably. That's where they'd have room schematically right here. Can't really attack the deep sidelines either because they just don't have kind of the rhythm or execution out there. So Washington, they're going to be free to sit in these single high coverages all game. There is one thing that I want to point out about what Cal would need to do in order to win. I think that this play call is actually better than some of the ones that we've seen in the past. So we're going to see something similar to that drive concept that we saw in the last play, where we're going to get a shallow and a dig, but now they're running it as more of a follow concept. So instead of getting the dig from the inside receiver and then bringing the shallow underneath of that, they're going to bring the shallow from the inside receiver and run the dig over the top. And what we're going to see here is that if Garbers would have had more time, this dig up here at the top of the screen is actually coming open into some good space here. So you can kind of see that receiver starting to break open, and we see all of that void. But the problem is that if you look at Garbers as he's setting up to throw here, right, he's got pressure coming at him. If he would have waited for this route up here at the top of the screen to break inside, he probably would have gotten sacked. So these inside breaking routes that take a little longer to develop aren't going to be there for Cal. I mentioned earlier that Washington likes to play. Why is this on execution? It looks like YouTube's. Oh, well, that's kind of what I mean by execution, actually. So I guess a better way to put it is that Washington's defenders are executing this kind of press fade better than Cal's. I don't mean to say that Cal is just like shooting themselves in the foot. I mean that Washington's out executing them. Nice. And by the way, this is another one of our excellent Pac-12 film reviewers, Hidlade. Those of you who follow Addicted to Quack or Oregon might recognize his stuff. And he gave me the higher quality video that we've got throughout a lot of this. So thanks out there. Good to see you here. All right. So as I say, when I say execution, I mean Washington is better. They are out executing Cal, not that Cal is failing to execute something that they necessarily should have been. All right, good. I mentioned earlier that Washington, in their single high coverages, they mix up a lot of zone and man stuff. And here, the reason that this dig route to the number 2 receiver is going to pop open is because here, instead of playing a zone like we saw in that drive concept where they bail out linebackers to play in the middle, here Washington is running more of a straight up man coverage. So what's going to happen is when this inside receiver runs his shallow cross, he's going to take his man defender with him. Washington's got these guys in the middle of the field coming on the pass rush. So I can actually slow that down. We can watch how as soon as this number 3 receiver runs across and takes his guy with him, that opens up this potential void for the dig coming from the number 2 receiver. Okay, so there we go. Here it is slowed down. I'm going to pause it right here. Here we see the shallow pulling this guy across. So this isn't zone. This guy's not dropping underneath like we saw in the drive concept, and that's what opens up all this space for the dig coming. So not a bad play call, but Cal's offensive line gets pushed back pretty bad here. And Garbers isn't able to connect on the fade. Getting back to the point about Washington's DBs being better here, a lot of this is just how well this guy's able to press up and jam. He's able to stay over the top right here. The receiver doesn't have a step on him at all. He can kind of lean a shoulder into him, use his body, force him out to the sidelines, and really leave Garbers. I mean, he maybe could have thrown a back shoulder or something. Maybe that's what he was thinking, but there's not a lot of room for him to go with the ball here. Really cool stuff. All right, so we're going to keep moving through this matchup between Cal's offense and Washington's defense. We're going to look at 11:38 in the second. It's been taking these videos a minute to load, so let me make sure that we're all good here. We can watch it live. Okay, nice. So this is another thing that's difficult about Washington's defense. In addition to the different things they can do with coverage, mixing up the man, mixing up the zone, they also have a high volume in their pressure game. And here we're going to see what that looks like against Cal's defense here, or Cal's protection here. Something that I want to point out, a key part of this play and why Washington's able to get this pressure relates to the protection and the pass rush. We're going to see this is something Cal's going to change when the game is on the line in the second half. But we want to watch this running back right here. Notice he's motioning out before the snap even happens. So Cal's in a true 5-man pass protection and what we call a scap protection, where it's just 5 offensive linemen against whoever the defense brings. When you play a scat protection like this, you're generally going to be in man pass protection, which means if you've got a guy across from you and he rushes one of your gaps, you have to take him. And that's going to be a critical piece right here. So let's see why. I'm actually going to slow this down. So the key to this play is, as I just said, in a man or scat pass protection, if you have a guy lined up across from you, you have to take him no matter which gap he attacks. So if we look at the left guard right here, we see that he's got this defensive lineman lined up outside of him. He's going to jump out to block that guy. We see that the center has a nose tackle lined up over him. He's going to sit inside to block that center, and that's going to be the thing that ends up opening up the lane for the pass rusher here. So let's slow this down. Okay. I'll pause it right here. We see the center has come to block the nose tackle. That's his man. And we see that when this lineman, or this guy who had his hand in the dirt, pops outside, he's the left guard's man. So the left guard's going to pop outside with him. So the center's on the nose tackle. Left guard is on, I don't know if that guy's a defensive end or a linebacker looking at the number, but what that's going to do is it's going to open up a lane right in between number 73, this left guard, and the center, who are both occupied, for that linebacker to come through unblocked to get the sack. So Washington here doing a really nice job of scheming Cal's protection and having a good blitz call ready in the event that Cal's running this kind of man pass protection scheme. So just another thing that the Huskies do really well under Jimmy Lake. We can watch it live now. So it is this linebacker right here who's going to end up hitting that play side, or that strong side A gap for the sack. There's just nobody there for him. Cal's going to make some protection adjustments later on that are going to be kind of interesting. Okay, I got one more play to kind of introduce this basic matchup, what was going on when Cal's offense was on the field. This is at 6:55 in the second. Okay, let's jump to that one. The next one. Okay, here we go, 6:55 in the second. This is our last scene setting kind of play. So we've seen a lot of cool stuff that Washington was doing. We've seen them playing these single high coverages, mixing up man versus zone, mixing up who drops out as a help player in the middle of the field. On this play, we're going to see one of the ways that Cal was able to have some success with that, and that's going to be on the zone read right here. So let's just watch this live to see how the play is going to go, and then we'll break it down. Okay, so if you watched Cal at all last year, you know probably the best thing that they did consistently was getting Garbers working in the run game and the zone read and on scrambles in the passing game. So here Cal's doing something kind of interesting that I mentioned in a few breakdowns. So Cal's actually in an unbalanced look right here. So if we look to the right of center, we see that there's a right guard and a right tackle and nobody on the line outside of them. So there are only two guys on the line of scrimmage to the right of center. And if we look at the top of the screen, Cal's got left guard, left tackle, tight end, and I think technically this receiver is counted as being on the line. So they've got four guys on the line to the left of center, only two to the right. This is an unbalanced formation. Washington's not really adjusting to this in any way. So in this case, I'm not sure that Cal really got the adjustment that they were looking for, but it almost doesn't matter because what's going to happen here is when Washington goes single high, when they play with this safety in the middle of the field, they're going to spin their strong safety down toward the strong side, toward where Cal's got this tight end. They do that against any kind of formation with a clear strong side like this. The fact that it's unbalanced doesn't really make a difference here. And what that's going to do is that's going to leave Cal with two blockers to take on these three defenders back here. We see Washington's defensive end right here is going to do the classic thing they tell you not to do when you're defending a zone read. He is going to crash down super hard with a very flat path for the running back cutback. So right here, this guy, he's got his shoulders pretty clearly turned inside. That's an obvious keep read for the quarterback who's going to take it around the edge. And at this point, this kind of becomes a leverage play, so I'm going to take it back. When we look pre-snap, we see if Cal doesn't have to block this defensive end, then everybody else on their offense has this kind of outside position or outside leverage on the remaining Husky defenders. And so when this defensive end crashes down, it's going to be really easy for this right tackle to seal off whoever he's blocking to the inside in combination with the right guard. On top of that, okay, let's get this running in slow motion. On top of that, Cal is bringing this wing tight end across the formation as an extra blocker. So the Bears are actually going to have fantastic numbers to run this zone read right here. We see here comes that wing tight end. He's coming around. He's going to be able to help his offensive lineman seal off that defender right there, letting Garbers get around to the edge. There's one more thing just about kind of awareness coming from Cal's running back right here. So I believe this is a real zone read. I think that the read is live. I think Garbers could have handed off to the running back, but he doesn't. And the thing that's really interesting to me here is what happens with that running back after he doesn't get the ball. So here's the mesh point. Okay, Garbers has the ball right now, and notice that this running back is now releasing out as a blocker. Okay, so he's realized that he didn't get it. He's now releasing up. He's going to be the guy that blocks this cornerback, which actually gives Cal an extra number to the backside. So in combination with bringing the wing tight end across to help seal off this defender, and the running back getting up to the cornerback on the edge, that's going to set up Garbers to pick up, I think, a 16-yard gain here. And on my, in my breakdowns, I talk about this kind of thing a lot, but the reason that this is so effective against Washington is because this is a single high coverage. I talk about this on Patreon all the time, so for people coming over from there, you've heard this before. But remember I mentioned that Washington's spinning safety is bringing the strong safety down, playing with the weak safety in the deep middle. If Washington were in a split safety coverage here, then this middle safety would be playing over the top to the bottom of the screen. He would give the Huskies an extra defender to tackle the quarterback. So the fact that they play so much single high stuff is going to make them vulnerable to the quarterback run game. And as in so many games, that's going to be the only way that Cal's really able to move the ball at times in this game. Some pretty comically bad tackling too. Absolutely. Speaking of execution, there's actually a fair amount of that going around in this game. On the bad tackling issue though, I mean, it is helped by the scheme. Sometimes even though a guy should be able to make the tackle, it'd be a lot easier for this linebacker to make the tackle if he didn't have a wing tight end in his face. It'd be a lot easier for this cornerback to make the tackle if he didn't have a running back in his face. And yeah, I mean, that that tackle is inexcusable, as is this free safety coming down. I mean, you can't win a lot of games doing it that way. So absolutely. Okay, so that kind of introduces the matchup between Cal's O and Washington's D. A lot of single high coverages, mix of man and zone. Cal struggling in the passing game, maybe being able to get some stuff going with the quarterback run game. So I might pause here and take a minute to see if there are any questions about what we just saw before I move on to the other side of the ball. Anything anybody would like to ask about or say? All right. Let's jump back to the first quarter and look at 14:25 in the first. Okay, so here Washington's on offense. This gives us a good sense of the matchup that's going on between their offensive line and between Cal's linebackers in particular, which was absolutely critical in this game. So here Washington's in an unbalanced formation of their own. There was a lot of that in this game. So they've got just the two offensive linemen on the line to the left, and they've got two wide receivers on the line here to the right. So if you're curious about the passing game, this inside receiver is covered. He's ineligible to catch the ball here. The reason that Washington's doing that, I think Cal has adjusted to this unbalanced formation. So if we see this safety down here, I think that he's shifted farther toward the strong side than he normally would be. If this were a typical balanced formation. So what Washington's trying to do is they're trying to get Cal pulled down here toward this strong side in this unbalanced formation. They want to do that so that they can get numbers running back the other way. And here they're going to do that with a counter play, pulling the right guard and this either fullback or H-back or wing tight end or whatever that guy is. So I'm going to slow this down so we can see the blocking scheme. These guys to the left are going to block down. They're going to come down to try and seal Cal's defenders inside. And then the right guard and the H-back are going to pull to the left for the kick out and wrap blocks. So here's the blocking scheme. Here we see number 51. He's the right guard. Here we see number 1. He's the H-back. They're both pulling across. 51 kicks out the defensive end. 1 is wrapping to get up to this weak side linebacker. Okay. And we'll talk about why that didn't work in just a second, because it's kind of a critical part of this matchup. Okay, so in general, when a team runs a lot of plays that use pulling linemen, like we see right here, the key to defending this is going to be about backside defenders recognizing the play and getting to the play side. So if we look at numbers here, Washington's got 2 blockers to the left of center, and Cal's in great shape. They've got 1, 2, 3, 4 defenders. Cal is way outnumbering Washington's offensive line to the play side. But when Washington pulls, they get a 3rd and a 4th blocker to the left side. Cal only has 4 defenders, so this blocking scheme is going to equalize numbers for the Huskies. And in general, when the offense and the defense have the same number of players, that's a win for the offense. If they can get a body on everybody, then they're going to feel like they did their job schematically. Obviously, sometimes you don't win even when you get equal numbers, but that's almost as good as it gets from the standpoint of blocking numbers. So the key for this is that when the offense tries to take these backside blockers and pull them to the play side. The key is for the backside defenders to recognize the blocking scheme and to get to the play side to match to equalize out those numbers. So for Cal, that's going to come from this linebacker right here. That's Evan Weaver. He is the best guy in a position to be the 5th defender to the play side to outnumber those 4 Husky defenders. So he's the guy that we want to watch. Let me make sure we're in nice slow motion here so that we can see him. He's going to end up defeating the block, I believe, of this right guard and climbing over to get into the lane to make the tackle. This is classic. This is when Cal's linebackers were good. This is what they were really good at. So here is the right guard coming out to block Weaver. And at this point, it looks like he should be able to seal him backside, but Weaver's going to slip that block, come underneath it, and get in there to make the tackle. Okay, so when the offense is using these pulling plays to get extra numbers, they're usually doing it because they think they've got good angles to seal off someone like this backside linebacker. But in this case, he's able to slip the block, get play side, and swing numbers back in favor of the defense. So one more time, watch Weaver. He's reading the right guard, probably reading the right guard / the running back in the backfield. And that tells him to cross the formation, slip a block, and make a tackle. If Weaver weren't there, you can see there's obviously a nice play side lane getting up to that cornerback. At that point, you've got a one-on-one on a defensive back in the lane. So schematically, this is really well set up for Washington. This is a pretty good play call in the run game here, but it's kind of scuttled by that inside linebacker coming from the backside. And so this is really the matchup. When Cal was able to get their linebackers across, they were able to shut these plays down. When they weren't, when Washington was able to maintain those blocks, they were able to get some pretty nice gains in the run game. That's what it was all about. Nice job by Johnson beating Adams too. Absolutely. Johnson, massively underrated, I think. Except for people who watch a lot of film, I think Johnson doesn't quite get the credit that he deserves. How much is the successful defense a function of scheme? How much is due to Weaver's unique skill set? A lot of it's due to Weaver. Any defense is going to coach their reads in the run game in this way. So Cal isn't doing anything weird or unique here. This is just the basic principle about how to defend a pulling lineman. The fact that Weaver was able to slip that block and not be delayed and get there before the running back could get downfield is just him being patient, reading the block really well, and doing a good job of shedding kind of in a phone booth there a little bit. We're going to see some other plays where it doesn't go that way. So that's definitely one of his unique strengths. And Cal's definitely going to miss him. Okay, so we can actually see a good example of exactly that on the next play, which is 8:58 in the first. Let me find that play. Maybe it's this 8:47. Let me see if I can find 8:58 in the first. Oh, here we go. I think I've labeled it as 9:03. Okay, so we're going to let that load so that it goes at a reasonable speed. Okay, so I don't mean to pick on the other linebacker across from Weaver, but if you watch throughout the season, there's just a clear difference between who's on the play side and who's on the backside in terms of being able to make those plays. So let's watch this at full speed just to see what happens. Okay. So remember, on this play, we're going to see Washington pulling like they like to do. They've got 2 tight ends at the top of the screen, a formation that they love to run. They're pulling that right guard again, number 51. This is just a classic power play. It's not counter because there's only one puller here. So keep an eye on 51. I'm going to slow this down, and we're going to watch him come across. Okay, so there he goes. He's pulling. Washington's bringing everybody down to the play side, kicking out this outside linebacker with their wing tight end. Okay, and what that does is when they get the kick out block here, the down block's coming from the rest of the play side linemen, that opens up this lane for number 51 to take on Weaver in the hole. Remember I said that if the offense can get a body on a body, they feel like they win, and we can see the reason for that right here. So Weaver does what he's supposed to do. I mean, he's trying to take that guy on and compress him, but ultimately Weaver has to take his outside gap. Because if Weaver jumps down inside, then the running back's just going to hit that lane in between number 1 and number 51. Weaver has to take on number 51 from the outside in order to close up that lane for the running back. And the reason that he's taking on the outside gap instead of the inside gap is just because of where his help is. So on this play, when Washington kicks out this outside linebacker, Weaver doesn't have any more help coming from the outside. So he has to be the box player. He's got to force this play back inside because he knows he's got his backside linebacker, just like we saw in the previous play. He's got that backside linebacker reading the guard and coming across the formation with him. So right here, we see that pulling number 51. Weaver takes on his outside gap, which is what he needs to do. That opens up this inside gap, but that's by design because Cal knows they've got their backside linebacker coming, but that guy's just a little bit late. And so the running, even though he ends up making the tackle, the running back's able to get 6 yards downfield before that guy can get there. If he's a step quicker, then maybe he can make this tackle or limit it more. But this is how Washington was able to have success. They were able to have success whenever they were able to beat Cal's backside linebackers across the formation on these pulls. Or at least that was one of the ways that they had success. So here's that linebacker. He's just getting sucked down a little bit. He's not as patient as Weaver. He's not reading and reacting as effectively. And that's the difference between a tackle for no gain and a tackle for a 6-yard gain. So that's kind of the matchup that we're looking at here. Let's see what else we can get. Okay, let's look at 8-15 to see some of the stuff that Cal's defense does well. We looked at what Washington does well. Now we can flip it. So this is going to be 8-15 in the first. Okay, I'm going to let that load up. We'll watch it full speed just to make sure everything's good to go. All right. This is classic Cal defense. When they're at their best, this is the kind of thing that they're doing. So on this play, Cal mixes up their coverages pretty effectively. They're inherently a zone team. They don't play a lot of true man, but they do a good job of mixing up, especially cover 3, cover 2, some quarters kind of stuff. And so here we're going to see one of the ways that they can use cover 2 really effectively in the run game. So on this play, Washington's running to the right. This is just a zone play. They're not pulling anybody here. They're in kind of a one back, no tight end set. And the thing that we really want to watch here is, as I said, Cal's in cover 2. So that means that this weak safety is going to be playing a deep half over the top. With that deep safety playing a deep half, the cornerback is going to be in underneath coverage. And in cover 2, at least against this kind of formation where there's only one receiver, that cornerback is a run defender. He's your force player. He's the outside most guy who's in position to play against the run. So let's start off by watching this cornerback playing a good cover 2 run technique for a corner. Okay, he's peeking inside, and look, when his receiver goes, when he reads run, he's coming to be that force player on the edge. He couldn't necessarily do this if there were another receiver down here, if this were a spread formation, but when there's only one receiver at the bottom of the screen, really common for good cover 2 cornerbacks to do this kind of thing. So if you're this defensive end, you know that you've got your cornerback. Do you think this is a true read? It looks like Eason should have kept it if so. Let's see. And with Eason, I wouldn't be surprised if they're doing fake reads. I mean, this is blocked like it's a real read. The linebacker, maybe, Eason's probably, I haven't watched him a lot, but my impression is that he's not a fantastic run threat. The linebacker's more doing a block down, step down thing than a true crash, so that might be what Eason's seeing. We see this guy, unlike the play where Garbers kept it earlier, this linebacker hasn't turned his shoulders inside. He's not running down. So he might be more doing like he sees his left tackle stepping away from him, and so he's just squeezing down but keeping his shoulders more or less parallel to the line of scrimmage. I don't know how Washington coaches that, how they decide when the quarterback should keep it versus when he should give it. The other thing about Cal that makes this read difficult is something that Cal loves to do. If you watch the reaction of this backside linebacker here, when he doesn't see a pull, right? So when he doesn't see power or counter, Cal loves to sit these inside linebackers and slow play them. And the idea is that when they do that, then this linebacker, unless the quarterback's a real run threat, then this linebacker should be able, if he slow plays this, to scrape if the quarterback keeps it. And we can kind of see that happening right here. Right, so Weaver hasn't moved, right? We see the play side linebackers going. Weaver is basically standing in his pre-snap stance. I mean, he's just bouncing. He's not moving at all. And now, as the quarterback clears the mesh, he's getting to a point where maybe he could read, maybe he could get outside that left tackle. So that complicates the reads a little bit. I don't know to what extent that impacts the way that they're having Eason read this. It's a tough call. But I will say that the way that Cal's playing this with this defensive end squeezing down inside, that absolutely killed them against Ole Miss. Ole Miss's quarterbacks got outside all day against this look. So it's a strategy. It's a way to defend the zone read. Maybe against Easton it was going to be effective, but it did burn the Bears in other games for sure. And not just on quarterback keepers. If you watch the Utah game, Zach Moss was cutting back outside of those squeezing defensive ends all game for massive, massive gains. So it's a stylistic thing. Different teams will read it differently. But it's ambiguous as to whether that should have been a give or a keep without knowing a little bit more. I would say. I don't know. What do you think? Easton ended his college career with negative rushing yards. Well, there you go. Cool. So coming back to the play side, we've seen this cover 2 cornerback forcing the play on the edge. What that allows Cal to do is it allows him to take this outside linebacker and stab him. Yeah, I mean, it's tough to say. Easton's not enough of a threat. Yeah, I mean, they probably need this defensive end to just fly down. They need him to turn and run before they probably want him keeping the ball. The other thing about the read here is, just because it's possible for the read to be live and for the quarterback to go through the motions, but to know that he's handing the ball off. So what I mean by that is it's entirely possible that this is a real zone read and that Easton is looking at this guy out here, but he's also making a pre-snap read. And so what he's seeing with his pre-snap read is Cal's got this nickelback maybe playing inside of this receiver. They've got this safety over the top. Remember I mentioned that Garber's run wouldn't have been as good if it were a true split safety coverage. Right? Well, here, what's Cal in? A split safety coverage. So it's possible that this is a real zone read and that Easton is actually eyeing this defensive end, but the pre-snap, he's seen the coverage, he's seen the nickelback, he's seen the safety, and he just knows he's not going to keep it and take it outside. So that's another option. So coming back to the play side, we know Cal's got this cover 2 corner. He's going to be the force player on the edge. And what that does is that allows this stand-up outside linebacker to stab inside of the right tackle and really wreak a lot of havoc. So keep an eye on this outside linebacker. 87 blows the block. The safety would have eaten Easton alive. Yeah, exactly. The safety or maybe the Sam. Let's see here. So let's check out... So what block are we talking about? We're talking about 87. Yeah. Oh, yeah. So you're talking about up here, this big slot receiver, tight end, missing the block with... And even if he does get a good block on this guy, Cal's got this safety to run the alley. So that's the benefit of playing split safety. It's worse in the box, but it's better against these kind of read-based plays. So let's just check out this defensive end. Look at what he's able to do. He knows he's got the cornerback outside. He's going to jump down inside, get a lot of penetration, and really just screw this whole thing up. So there he is. That's number 96. He's stabbed down inside of the right tackle. At that point, the running back has nowhere to go play side. The backside defensive line's squeezing this and compressing it pretty well. As we've seen, they've got this defensive end squeezing down. So the running back here is going to have to try to bounce it. But here's that cornerback, that cover 2 corner. Here is that play side linebacker. So that running back's got nowhere to go. And once again, there's Johnson right in there on the play. Tevin Paul getting excited. So good example of how different coverages can get you into different run fits. I wouldn't be surprised if this stunt is actually called on the field. So often when we think about blitzes and stunts, we think of the defensive coordinator calling them, but a lot of twists, stunts, blitzes are actually things that the defense has the ability to call on the field. So I think that if Washington would have put another receiver out to this side, Cal wouldn't have been able to play with this cornerback on the edge. So I think this guy would have been the force player staying outside. But when there's only a single receiver down here, Cal can switch it up. They can call this stab by this stand-up end or linebacker, and he can come down inside to cause all that trouble. I think that these stunts and twists probably called on the field are a huge part of what makes Cal so successful against the run, because they don't always have great numbers. They're not an overwhelming numbers defense like, I don't know, Clancy Pendergast at USC just loves to brute force everything, and that causes problems for him in his own right. Cal much more likely to play straight up and count on movement and stunts to kind of try and confuse blocking schemes like this. Okay, let's check out... Okay, let's take a look at the passing game in this matchup. This is 8:46 in the first. Right, I need to actually find it. There it is. Okay, so we can look a little bit at the passing game for Washington. Neither team had a fantastic passing game in this game. I think neither team had a fantastic passing game, period. But this game was not decided by the passing game. But here is something, I believe this is, So part of the reason that Washington wasn't able to get a passing game going, as I mentioned, Cal likes to play a lot of zone. Here they're in cover 3, something we're going to talk about a lot today. So that means this cornerback is a deep sideline defender. We can just watch as the ball snapped. He's bailing out. Okay, so he's kind of doing his shuffle out to play his deep outside third. They've got a free safety in the middle. Cornerback's the other deep third defender. The quarterback's looking out here. He sees that cornerback bailing. He sees that Cal's not getting anyone out to the flat, so he's going to throw a little hitch underneath that bailing cornerback. This cornerback's just going to do a great job of sitting on it and rallying, making sure that even though this is caught, it can't be a huge gain. So as long as Cal can get their cornerbacks there immediately, they're kind of fine bailing out, playing zone, taking away the deep stuff, because they know that their cornerbacks are well coached in their reads. They're good at looking into the quarterback, seeing what his shoulders and eyes are doing, and then breaking on these passes really quickly. That's a particular strength of Cal's secondary across the board, I think. So Washington was able to complete some passes, but they weren't going to go 80 yards running that kind of thing. They did have some nice stuff going in the passing game. They did do some things that effectively attacked Cal's zone coverages. We can see that at 736. Okay, let me let this load. Let me remind myself what's about to happen. Oh, okay. So this is a good schematic call. Is that a smash on the other side of the field? And should Eason have waited for it instead? Oh, let me go back to the previous play. Yeah, there is a little bit of lag between when I record and when it actually gets live cast. So definitely feel free to get these questions in. If it looks like I'm ignoring you, it's just because of the lag. So let's check out smash back here. That's a great point because, let's see. Are you talking about the bottom of the screen or the top of the screen? Let's see. Is that a smash on the other side of the field? Maybe. It's hard to tell. This linebacker here jams up that tight end pretty well. I think that it's very possible that was going to be smash. So at the top of the screen. So for those of you who haven't heard a lot about smash, smash is a common cover 2 beater. So Cal's in this split safety coverage. So what's going on with smash is that the outside receiver runs something short to hold the cornerback, that cover 2 corner we've been talking about, and then the inside receiver runs a corner out behind him. So you're trying to high-low this cornerback right here. If he sits shallow on the outside threat, then you want to throw over his head on the corner route. If he drops underneath the corner route, then you want to throw shallow to the outside receiver. Here, this linebacker is going to do a good job of disrupting the route of that inside receiver. So if he is running a corner route, the timing's a little bit screwed up here. The other thing about this is that it all comes down to how good Cal is at cover 2. And for the most part, they're pretty good. They get burned by smash occasionally, but it's not a huge problem for them. And it kind of comes back to what we were saying. I think I might have called this cover 3, but I think that this is actually cover 2. So I misspoke here, but this cornerback's still bailing out. So down at the bottom of the screen, that holds true, but I think Cal is in a split safety coverage here. If you're good at running cover 2, the way that you defend smash is that the cornerback drops underneath the corner until the quarterback commits his shoulders to the underneath route and then rallies up on it, a lot like we saw the cornerback down at the bottom of the screen doing. So we see right here, if that guy would have gotten a clean release and run a corner route attacking the sidelines at 15 yards, the cornerback is dropping underneath that. And so then Eason could have thrown underneath to this guy, if this is a smash concept, and then whether or not that works depends entirely on how fast this cornerback reads his eyes and shoulders and triggers on that underneath route. Cal's pretty good at that. We saw their cornerback rallying on a short route down at the bottom of the screen. But they probably could have gotten a completion here. The question is just how big of a completion would it have been? Would it have gotten them what they wanted, or would it have looked like what we saw down here at the bottom? Nice. Good question. Let's see here. I will say overall, I don't think that Washington got great offensive play calling under their previous coordinator. I've been waiting for him to make a change for a while, but it's not always futile. Like there's some good stuff in there where they're just kind of, this is going to be an execution problem, not a scheme problem. So let's just check this out. There again, we see Cal's defensive backs rallying really hard on this underneath stuff. Receiver should have caught this, obviously, but his job's made harder by the nickelback getting there to make contact immediately. So bad execution by that guy. But the scheme here is really, it's a nice touch. So Cal's in another kind of split safety look, common trips coverage where they're manned up on the outside and playing 1, 2, 3 over 2 to the inside. And so what Washington's trying to do is they're trying to run this number 2 receiver into this space, kind of in the middle of that triangle. So this is really sound scheme. We can see as this guy starts to curl up, he's got plenty of space. So Eason reads these plays well. He's got the arm to make a whole bunch of throws. But on this play, Cal rallies quickly and makes life a little bit tough for that receiver. I think Weaver actually gets in there and punches the ball out. I don't think it's the initial contact. Yeah, we'll slow that down. I think Weaver gets that right arm in there. But yeah, the nickelback also, kind of gets in there on his arms and makes it hard for him to secure that catch. So you'd like your receiver to show stronger hands there, but Cal, I think, gets 2 different punches or strips in there to get that ball out. Is Eason late on this throw? Probably. You'd probably like him throwing it right about here, right? The receiver's route's also not super crisp. But yeah, Eason could have been throwing right here. If you were winding up right here, this is probably a completion. Still, though, it's good enough for college. Not good enough for the pros, but good enough for college. Yeah, I do think the wide receiver drifts a little bit, too. Just something, when you see a really great receiver, when they start to make their cut right here, we see he's making his cut kind of 1 yard past the first down marker. A really good receiver is going to be able to stop right there. But we see here that receiver drifts an additional 2 yards, bringing him closer to that nickelback. So it's not a fantastic route by the receiver. Eason probably could have thrown it sooner. Not great execution by the UW passing game, for sure. Nice. Okay, we are going to see some plays where Washington was able to attack Cal's zones effectively, though. They did complete some of these, so it wasn't all doom and gloom. Their passing game was okay. I think it performed a little bit worse than it was called. It didn't drastically underperform its play calling, but I think execution, a little bit better execution, would have given them a better passing game across the board. Okay, so those are the themes of what we're seeing when we look at how these two teams were attacking each other. Now's a good time maybe to pause for any questions before we start getting into the chronological part of this breakdown, looking at significant plays and seeing why they worked within that framework that we've just set up. I'm going to grab a drink of water. By the way, Hitler, are you on that Quack 12 podcast with the simulations? Are you doing that stuff, or do you only do the film? Do you only do the film study? A lot of teams are doing like simulated seasons. It's been fun to watch all the creativity. I know that the Right for Cal guys are like simulating just the film study. Yeah, me too. I know Right for Cal, actually a 3 for those Cal fans out there. They're doing a simulated game against TCU. So head over to Right for Cal at 3, Right for California, and you can check that out if you like to check out that kind of stuff. But yeah, the Quack 12 podcast is doing something similar. And I'm here doing the Scheme Rewind. Okay, let's take a look at one of the ways that Washington was able to set up one of their many field goals in this game. They scored 1 touchdown and kicked 4 field goals, I believe. So, as I said, this wasn't the most exciting offensive game for either team, but they did get some stuff going. So here we're going back to 4:34 in the first. Okay, there's a little bit of pre-snap shifting by those 2 tight ends to get into one of these 2 tight end sets that Washington loves to run. Let me remind myself of what we're going to see here. Okay, cool. Yeah, there's like fantastic entertainment value for really for Addicted to Quack and for Right for Cal. There are so many hilarious people that work for both of those outlets. Okay, so previously we saw, as I set up the matchup between Cal's defense and Washington's offense. We talked about how Cal's backside linebackers were reading pulling linemen to get basically so that those pullers would take them to the play side. And so here Washington's going to attack Cal's defense in a way that kind of combats that. It's not quite a counter to those plays. It's just a different run scheme that's going to limit Cal's ability to bring these backside defenders over to the play side. So if we look at this play right here, Washington is just running a straight up zone. So remember, if this were power, they couldn't, if this were power or counter, this right guard would be pulling and this linebacker would be reading him to chase. But on a zone play, that offensive lineman doesn't go anywhere. He's just stepping to the play side and blocking zone. And so that's going to prevent really this backside linebacker from doing the kinds of things that he could do on a power play. And here he's actually going to get sealed off on the backside, opening things up for that running back to get a pretty nice gain. Very nice gain. Okay, so by changing up the blocking scheme, Washington's able to prevent Cal from making the kind of reads that could get this linebacker play side. And the reason that matters is if you look at how, just look at the basic numbers here, we see that Washington's got 4 blockers to the left of center, and Cal really only has 4 defenders. Once again, if the offense has even numbers, then as far as they're concerned, that's a win, and we see that on this play. So the things that make this happen is when Washington goes zone instead of running power, they're able to keep this linebacker on the backside. They're also going to be able, Cal's in their kind of base 3-4 alignment here, so the key block here is actually this center against the nose tackle. So let's watch that block because potentially Cal's got 4 defenders up here, as I said. Potentially either the nose tackle or this backside linebacker could become the 5th play side defender. We know this guy's going to be held backside, and ultimately he probably should be. But the key block is going to be the center on the nose tackle right here. So hopefully this will start running forward anytime now. Right, so once the center seals number 90 off backside here, then Cal's really stuck 4-on-4 at the top of the screen, and that's the thing that ultimately opens up this lane. But that center does a fantastic job. We just saw he sealed off 90, passed him off to the right guard, who's able to overtake him a little bit. Then that center is getting up to that weak side linebacker. Really great center rep for that guy. I hadn't realized that before. But that keeps Cal 4-on-4 to the play side. That means there's going to be a lane, and Washington's able to hit it. So good way to mix up their blocking schemes there and get away from the power run game. Okay, so that set up Washington's first field goal drive. They were leading 3-0 for what felt like forever. The next big play is something that Cal was able to do well in this game is they were able to force some turnovers. And here, we've already kind of given props to Cal's defensive backs a little bit. This is another play that's just 100% on good defensive back play. So the matchup that we're watching is this up here at the top of the screen. Cal's in a single high coverage of their own, so they've got a safety in the deep middle. And what Washington wants to do is they want to exploit this seam in between. Actually, we'll run this forward a bit. They want to exploit this seam in between the cornerback and that free safety. So Eason's looking out there. He sees what he wants. By the way, there's some cool wide receiver stuff here, but let's just watch, see what happens. Really great play by Cameron Bynum right there. Okay, so let's talk about the wide receiver play here because it's kind of interesting. We know Washington wants to exploit this seam here. And so watch this guy's stem as he releases off the line. He's going to take an outside stem. Okay, so notice he stems outside toward the numbers, and the goal of that is to widen this cornerback and create more space for him to catch this ball down the seam. Something else that he's doing is he's stemming right here into Bynum's blind spot. So by stemming outside like this, his goal is to get into a relationship like this where Bynum can't see him. Really common for these routes that are attacking the seam, stem outside, get in the corner's blind spot, and then when he can't see you, cut underneath of him back into the seam. So that's what he's trying to do here. He does a pretty good job. Eason thinks he's got it. Bynum sits on this really well and jumps in there to get the interception. Not a bad play by this free safety coming over either. He was close. So let's watch that one more time. So a lot of good defensive back play in this game for the most part. Stems outside, gets in his blind spot, comes back into the seam. Bynum sits on it, jumps inside, and gets the interception. Really good play there. So Cal was able to force some turnovers that probably stopped Washington from kicking 5 or 6 field goals. Okay, now we're going to get to Washington's only touchdown drive. So we're going to go to 10:54 in the second. All right, let me get this back, get it loaded. Okay, here we're going to see classic UW in terms of what I've talked about earlier. So this is a big play where Washington was able to get some success in the run game. Nice job by Bynum, but isn't this mostly on Eason floating it? So Brian inside the numbers. Let's go back and check that out. 13:56 in the second. We'll run back there. Okay. I think if Bynum's not there, I don't know how much Eason floated it. I think he kind of hit that receiver in stride. You could argue that maybe he should have tried to lead him back inside a little bit more, stopped him up short. But we're saying, what's going on? Shouldn't he have hit Brian in the numbers? So, okay, I think that we could say that you could definitely talk about ball placement here. If he leads his receiver a little bit less and gives him a chance to just kind of body up, I think maybe the receiver could have jumped in there. Yeah, I mean, Eason's leading him. He thinks he's got Bynum stuck outside, so he's trying to throw his receiver open into that space in the seam that he thinks he's created, but Bynum jumps it a little bit. If he would have known that Bynum were going to sit on it that effectively, then he might have been able to throw this a little bit shorter and given his receiver the chance to get his body between Bynum and the ball. Yeah, I could see that argument. Shouldn't he have hit him right in the numbers? Yeah, he would have had to bring him back toward the line of scrimmage a little bit. Like if he's throwing it right into his chest, then he gives him a better chance there. I can see that for sure. Nice. Cool. Okay, so let's check out 10:54 in the second. Cool. Okay, so here, I wonder if Washington's doing a hard count or something. So this is just classic Washington getting exactly what they want. So we see they're in another one of those two tight end sets. They're going to be running their power play here. So they're pulling this left guard across to the right to try and create numbers. That's going to give them 5 blockers to the right of center, the 4 originals plus the puller. And if we look at Cal's numbers, they've only got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They're going to need they're going to need 2 things in order to defend this, because if Washington's going to have 5 blockers, they need 6 defenders. So they're really going to need all 4 of these guys, obviously, who they've got. They're going to need Weaver to cross the formation as the 5th play side defender, but then they're also going to need good run defense from this cornerback. When you go to 2 tight ends like this and run toward those 2 tight ends, you're forcing oftentimes cornerbacks to be run defenders, which when you're in compressed to the box like this, that's something they're not going to be as effective at. And we're going to see that going on right here. So on this play, first of all, this tight end does a pretty good job locking up this outside linebacker. I mean, the outside linebacker has maybe got him locked out a little bit more, but the fact that they're tied up with each other is ultimately what lets this bounce. So Weaver doesn't slip a block here like we saw in the previous play, but he does use up a block, which is just as important from a numbers standpoint. So it'd be even better if he could slip it, and we've seen him do that before. But the key here is that Weaver is using up, I believe it's the right guard. Let me double check that. No, it's the right tackle. So Weaver's able to use up the block of that right tackle, and so that leaves Cal 5-on-4 against the remaining blockers. So not a great play, but not schematically problematic. Now, what is schematically problematic is that when that outside linebacker gets locked up inside, when this outside linebacker gets locked up with that tight end, he does give up this edge a little bit, and what that does is it forces this cornerback to be a run defender. Cal's in, I think they definitely are in cover 3 this time, or at least cover 3 up at the top of the screen. So this cornerback's bailing out. So when this play bounces outside of that outside linebacker, that forces the cornerback to come up and make the play. And he gets there, but he can't get there until it's already gone for 10 yards. I don't know what the penalty on that play was. But that's kind of Washington getting the kind of looks that they want to get. Let's see. So that brings us to their only touchdown, which is 8:08 in the second. Wrong play. Second quarter, 8:08. Maybe this one. Yeah, this is it. Okay. So this is Washington's only touchdown right here. And let me remind myself of what's going to happen. Okay, cool. Let's take a look at this at full speed. Yeah, okay. So Washington here, we've seen that they like to mix up plays with pulling guards, like power and counter, with their zone run game. They had a good amount of diversity and kind of a pro-style run game right here. So here they're running zone again. They're running it away from the tight end up here at the top of the screen, so to the left. And this is a zone lead play. So they're bringing this fullback who's kind of leading the running back on this zone play right here. But that's not where the play is going to go. Okay, so the real issue here is that if we watch this outside linebacker on the backside, well, one of the issues here is he's just straight up going to trip. And that's going to, so here he ends up falling flat on his face. That's going to let the running back get outside. That's the thing that gets Washington the first down. The thing that gets him the touchdown is this weak safety taking a pretty terrible angle, giving up the sidelines, and letting Washington's running back get into the end zone. So this is the only touchdown that the Huskies got in this game. We've seen that Cal's run defense was pretty stout. Here we've got an outside linebacker falling down to open up the cutback lane, and a safety missing a tackle to create the touchdown. That wasn't too common in this game. Washington wasn't able to rip off these 10-plus yard runs very often, but when it did happen, that was the only way they were able to get to the end zone. All right, so that makes it 10-0. Let's see. Let's get to... Nice. Okay. Once again, talking about turnovers were kind of a story of this game. So here Cal's going to get their second turnover. Once again, this is going to be Evan Weaver in action. Okay. All right, this is just a pure hustle play. There's not too much scheme going on here. And there's the forced fumble. Okay, let's see the path that he had to take to get there. Okay, so here's Weaver up at the top of the screen. On this play, he's blitzing around the edge, or he's scraping around the edge against an empty set. Okay, so Cal's doing a nice pass rush of their own. They're using two first-level defenders to take out the right guard and right tackle, and then bringing Weaver around the edge. He's not the fastest guy in the world, but when you're unblocked, you can get there. But then the real effort part of this play is just running that down and forcing the fumble. So it's a pretty classic Weaver play, I'd say. Just all determination. For someone who doesn't look very fast on tape, the amount of ground that he covers sometimes is really incredible. So that was a key play right there. Okay. So I believe Cal got a field goal somewhere in there. I think that they set it up with some of the plays that we might have looked at earlier. So we will come back to more Cal scoring in the second half. But that should be the end of the first half. I might take a minute here to pause and get a drink of water and see if there are any questions or comments. So if you've got anything, put it in the chats. I'll be right back. Yeah, let's take a look at how Easton should have responded. Let's see here. Let me look at the coverage. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. So Cal's spinning strong. Boy, yeah, I don't know why he didn't hit that tight end. I wonder, Cal does some stuff with these safeties. Without the all-22, you can't always see it. So it's very possible that Cal is dropping down this safety right into this maybe 12-yard range or so to kind of rob. No, he's bailing out. Yeah, I honestly have no idea why Eason didn't throw the ball right now. He's not getting a ton of pressure. The Y's looking back inside. He's got eyes on him. We know that the safety's bailing out. I have no idea why Eason didn't throw that ball, aside from maybe he sensed the pressure. But yeah, he could have been throwing that ball right here. So he was a little quick to leave the pocket there for sure. Absolutely. Nice. Okay, let's get into the second half. This is the half where all the offense happens, so if that's what you're into, you're going to like this next bit. And this next half is obviously better if you're a Cal fan, because Cal ended up scoring a couple of touchdowns and winning the game. So we'll start off at 13:54 in the third quarter. Let's see here. All right, we're going to let that load up. I'm going to remind myself what's happening here. Okay, awesome. Let's watch this at full speed just so that we see where this play is going. All right, here is a big gain. 23 has a really good drive here. He ended up scoring a couple of touchdowns, and this is his first big impact on the game here. So the thing that we're watching for is Cal's running zone to the left here. Yeah, they're running either a zone solid or a zone slice play. So they're taking this wing tight end and bringing him across the formation, either to block for a potential zone read or to kick out this backside edge defender. And I do want to say a little bit about the fact that Cal is running. If we watch the line, they're stepping toward the left here. Okay. This might even just be a straight up base play. There's not a lot of zone movement here. So we'll come back and we'll talk about Cal running toward the tight end maybe on a later play. But something that Washington ran into is that in the second half, they did get out of their run fits to kind of an alarming degree. And on this play, we're going to see how when you're Cal or any team and you put two tight ends in the box and you force the defense to start bringing some defensive backs in as true box defenders in the run, then you can start forcing some mistakes in run fits that aren't necessarily scheme related, but are more just forcing guys to do things they're not totally comfortable with. So on this play, we're going to keep an eye first on this outside linebacker, because as the inline tight end steps toward him, he's going to jump down inside of that block, apparently giving up the edge. So we see here's 9. He's jumped down inside of this block by the tight end, and that's going to be the first part of the problem. Now, we saw Cal run a play where their backside edge defender was, or where their play side edge defender was able to stab down inside because he knew that he had a defensive back outside of him to force the ball. That was that cover 2 look that we saw. So on this play, I think that this guy, I don't know that he's making a mistake. I think he's coming down inside because he thinks that he's going to have a defensive back to fill the outside gap. So we know this guy stabs down inside. I believe the guy we want to watch now is this player right here. Okay. As this play attacks him, see how right here he's in position to fill the edge outside of that stunt, right? He should be in position to take away something on the edge, but he maybe gets caught by the wing tight end crossing or something, because he is going to get taken all the way out of the play. Okay, so if he's the guy that's supposed to be filling that outside gap, big mistake by him. When that outside linebacker goes down inside, he's going to give up the edge, and Cal's running back's going to be able to get outside for a huge gain. So these kind of run fit problems were something where Washington often had okay position to take away these plays, but they just didn't fit up the run as they needed to. I don't think that number 3 here is the guy making a mistake. I think this is maybe a man coverage, and he's responsible for the wing tight end who's crossing the formation. So I think he's doing what he's supposed to do by running across. I think that this guy is who should have been sitting on the outside in order to take away that gap. Either that or number 9 should have sat on the outside, but this defensive back chases the wrong thing no matter how you look at it. And that's what gives up the edge for Cal to get that huge gain. So, that's a lot of what we're going to see is these mistakes leading to huge plays for Cal. And that includes, not the next play. That'll include a later play, though. So if we go to 3:12:04. All right. So this is going to be a different kind of issue. So I've mentioned that Washington is pretty diverse in the things that they do. I've talked about it mostly in terms of coverage, but they're one of these teams that can use kind of flexible personnel sets to get into a variety of looks. And so what we're seeing right here, if we look at this pre-snap, this is going to be a touchdown for Cal, by the way, a nice long run by that same running back. What Washington's really doing is they're kind of in, and I don't know exactly how they label everybody on here, but they're showing what looks like a 4-man line with a linebacker walked up over the center. So what they're doing is they're kind of using either like a 3-3 style personnel or like a 4-2 style personnel, depending on how you think of this guy. And what they're doing is they're getting into something called a 46 front. So they want to cover up the center with this linebacker. They want to cover up the guards with these two interior linemen, and they want to cover up the tackles with these outside defenders on the edges. And the goal here is just put 5 guys on the line of scrimmage, force the offensive line to block everybody one-on-one. So that's kind of the setup here. And they're getting into that by taking this linebacker and putting him over the center at the first level, kind of having him play in the role that a traditional nose tackle would in this kind of tight or 46 front. Okay, so they're getting creative with their personnel, getting creative with their scheme, lining up in one personnel grouping, using linebackers in non-traditional ways to create another kind of look. The problem for that is that when your whole goal is to create one-on-ones, you'd better make sure that all your guys can win the one-on-ones, because right here, Washington's got a linebacker lined up across from the center, and that center is just going to drive him downfield, okay? So not 100% dominant, but also you don't want your nose tackle to be 4 yards downfield as the running back's looking to cut back. So the fact that there's this stand-up player lined up over that center causes problems, and what that does is when the center is able to drive that guy downfield by himself, that allows the right guard to not have to double team on that guy, which he might have had to do if that were a guy with his hand in the dirt. That right guard is now free to get up to this guy playing the role of a middle linebacker right here. Okay. So the center's able to control the walked up linebacker, right guard's able to get to the only guy at the second level, and that allows this fantastic cutback lane to develop for the running back. And then once again, more comically bad tackling as it was put earlier. I mean, really inexcusable by the safety right there. But it was already going to be a huge play before he got there. One more block that I have to call out here. We know the center and the right guard are going to take out this walked up linebacker and the second level linebacker. This right tackle actually does a fantastic job crossing the face of this interior defensive lineman here. So right now this interior guy's lined up inside of that right tackle. I'm going to slow this down. Just watch how he's able to flip that position. Okay, so here comes that right tackle. Okay, here he's got arms on him. He's grabbed him. He just manhandles him back to the outside, right? So now 71's crossed that guy's face, pushed him outside, opening up a very nice cutback lane for that running back to get downfield into the secondary. I would agree. I think that this is, including the right tackle and including the center, that's one of the best reps that you could ask for from Cal's offensive line in 2019. Really nice execution there. Actually, this game, I mean, we haven't seen the last of it. I mean, Cal's offensive line did start to control things here in the second half. And this was early in the year, and Washington's always had a great defense with great front personnel. I know they replaced a bunch of guys, if I'm not mistaken. But this was kind of a suggestion that maybe, Washington, this was an early sign that Washington's defense wasn't going to be as dominant as they had been in the past. And 94 down here, he's responsible for the B gap. He doesn't do anything amazing, but he holds up relatively okay. But yeah, I mean, the center and the right tackle are really the heroes of this play. This game was the high point of Dancy's season. Yeah, and when you're looking at these running backs, I hope that I got some good reps of number 34 in here, Chris Brown, Cal's other running back, because you definitely see different styles of play here. But I mean, Dancy, when he's got a lane like that, he does have some speed, so he can hit it and turn it into a big play. A slower back might have gotten run down here. But Brown, was really, really strong on some plays that were operating in a very little amount of space. Okay, so maybe, yeah, I don't know Washington's personnel as well as I might, so it looks like maybe they've got some players who aren't who weren't their first string or not their starters playing in here. That could explain some of Cal's extraordinarily good execution. Yeah, this is a good drive for 23. All right. Cool. Let's come, and now I want to look at a couple plays from Washington's next field goal drive. We've already kind of said everything that's important about the matchup between Washington's offense and Cal's defense. Washington ran a lot of power. They mixed in some zone. Either they were able to beat Cal's linebackers and cut off that backside pursuit, or they weren't. Either they were able to hit some nice passes for 5 to 10 yards against Cal's zones, or they weren't, but there wasn't a lot that was new in the second half. So we're going to show some big plays just because there were some good notable things that happened. But for the most part, we already understand why Washington was only able to cobble together long field goal drives and they weren't able to punch it in. 94 is a 4-star. Okay. So, yeah, I mean, Washington still has talent. But I don't know, maybe next year will be a better year for them. Okay, let's go to 8:06 in the third. All right, so this is a play that's going to help them set up a field goal. Okay, and what's going to happen here? Oh, nice. Okay, so here we're going to see just a different way that Washington was able to attack Cal's zone coverages. On Cal's touchdown, I mentioned this 46 front, or this kind of like nickel bear front. Here we see Cal doing that same thing, forcing one-on-ones across the offensive line. So they got 3 down linemen in the middle with outside linebackers on the edge and 1 linebacker at the second level. So this is that look that Washington was creating by walking up their middle linebacker on the last play. Here Cal's doing it with a little bit more traditional personnel for this kind of look. You'll see this all over the Pac-12 in the country as an anti-spread defense. So on this play, what Washington's doing is they're creating conflict for this middle linebacker right here. So remember, he's the only guy at the second level because Cal's got their outside linebackers walked up to get into this tight front. And so what they're doing is Washington is at the top of the screen, they're running a shoot concept. So they got a slant coming inside with a running back working outside. And so this inside slant is going to hold that middle linebacker in the middle. And then where they're going to run into trouble is Washington's then taking this number 3 receiver and running him on a dig back into the middle. So this linebacker is getting pulled in 2 directions. He's got the slant coming here, and he's got the dig coming behind him. Now on this play, Cal is trying to give that guy help. They're bailing out this outside linebacker. They're kind of hoping he can wall that number 3 receiver. But he's not going to be able to get any kind of collision on him. And so this guy's going to be able to break back inside uncontested. Here, that linebacker is stuck between giving up the slant or giving up the dig behind him. He sits on the slant a little bit. Maybe you'd like to see him drop inside underneath the dig, or maybe he was expecting a little bit more help from that outside linebacker. But that 2-on-1 stretch is something that Washington did a really nice job of setting up here. Once again, it's a little Keystone Cops as the guy bobbles the ball, but it ends up working out well for the Huskies. And we can certainly say, even though you'd like to see him secure that catch better, the scheme here in the passing game is pretty good against this look. It does a nice job of opening things up, taking advantage of the fact that this outside linebacker is dropping all the way from off the line of scrimmage. He's going to have a tough time stopping this inside receiver from getting over the top. So just a nice concept for beating Cal's zone coverages here. And that safety doesn't really have leverage either, so. And that's going to get them close to the red zone, if I'm not mistaken. And that's going to set up a really cool play schematically. So we're going to see something with a lot of imagination from Washington here. I'd be curious to hear if any of you have seen this kind of play before. Unfortunately, I think the tape might have come in a little bit late. So the broadcast might have come in a little bit late, so we don't get to see the whole thing. But I think we can kind of reconstruct enough to show what's really interesting here. So we've seen that Washington likes to run counter, which means they'll take a guard and an H-back from the same side and pull them across the field. And we've seen that the reason they do that, or that when they pull, like if they were pulling these 2 guys from left to right, the way Cal would have to defend that would be to take this backside linebacker and run him across with those pullers. Okay, so we've seen that before. On this play, Washington's showing that. They've got a guard pulling from left to right, and they've got an H-back pulling from left to right. So I'm actually going to slow this down. Okay, so here we see those 2 pullers. Now, the thing that's different here is look at 70, 51, and whoever's in front of that guy, okay? This is not what you would see on a counterplay. On a counterplay, those guys are going to be blocking play side. Here, they're both sneaking to the opposite side of the formation. I don't know if I've seen this before. I'm sure it's been done, There's nothing new. But those guys, instead of blocking to the quote unquote play side, sneak behind the backside blockers and lead up to Cal's defenders. So this is a fake counter play. It's a play that's trying to use counteraction by these two blockers to pull Cal's linebackers to the right. Now, Evan Weaver never moves, like ever. He sits and reads and reads and reads. So you'll notice that the play side linebacker is chasing that counter action. Weaver's sitting on the backside, and he's ultimately going to make this play. Like, he is not fooled at all, and that's going to let him run this down. If Weaver isn't here chasing this play, then this lineman is going to get up to the safety. This lineman's probably going to be able to keep driving that cornerback downfield. There's a very good chance that this is a touchdown where the ball carrier is able to cut back inside and hit this lane for 7. The fact that Weaver is able to sit, be patient, read this, and make this tackle, forcing a field goal, is probably the game-saving play for Cal. I think that there might not be a play that was much more important than that one, given how things developed. So really cool scheme from Washington. It's rare that I see a blocking scheme that I've never seen before. But an even better job by Cal's linebacker sitting and reading this thing patiently. Really cool play. As it is, 70 almost could have gotten there. Fake counter, O-line sneak. Cool stuff. All right, let's get down to some Cal scoring drives now. So we saw the touchdown to Dancy. UW doesn't run this again until late in the year. They run against Utah and Colorado. Was it as successful? By the way, in case you all can't tell, you should absolutely be reading Hillyday's stuff at Addicted to Quack, because I think he's a rare person who could tell me when this play was run again later in the season by the Huskies. Is this buffering or something? Am I losing my internet connection? Okay, we're good. All right. Are you checking notes? I'm going to queue up the next play. We're going to start looking at Cal's offensive comeback. 5:54 in the third. Have you ever seen that play run by anybody else? I was completely unfamiliar with it. 16 yards versus Utah. What'd you call it? I forgot what I called it. All right, well, here we're pulling out Cal's play. Okay, here we go. All right, so we're returning now to a theme that's going to be crucially important for understanding a big play that Wisconsin ran it twice in the Rose Bowl. Oh, nice. Very cool. Counter end around. Awesome. That's good stuff. I'll have to look into that. Nice. Okay, so let's check out how Cal was able to start getting some things going and to get some touchdowns of their own. So we just saw the touchdown to Dancy. They had a first half field goal, but that was it. Things really start rolling for the Bears here in the third quarter. So the thing that I want to point out here, this is going to be, I believe, a successful zone read. Let me just run it forward to double check. And by zone read, I don't mean the quarterback kept it. I meant the play was a zone read and it was successful, but in this case, the quarterback hands off. Good. So the thing to point out here is not so much about the scheme of the play, but the way that Cal's running it, which I guess is kind of a scheme thing. So if we look at the formation, Cal's in what I call ace, which is a tight end and a receiver to one side, and then two receivers to the other. So it's a 2x2 set with one tight end lined up to one side. And so the key here is that Cal's running this zone read toward the tight end. Okay, so we could call this like tight zone or closed zone. If it were run away from the tight end, we could call that split zone. But here Cal is running tight zone toward the tight end, and there just so happens to be a read for the quarterback. So we see how this develops. Okay, this is probably an RPO. Now that I look at it, it looks like Garbers is reading a linebacker instead of a defensive end. So his option is a slant to this slot receiver up here. So this is a zone RPO. With the option to throw the slant to number 4 here. The reason this works, once again, Washington getting themselves into a little bit of trouble with the blitz game, which will be a theme here in the second half. This play side linebacker is going to blitz. If we look at the numbers here, Cal's got 3 blockers to the right of center. Washington's got 3 box defenders plus a safety who could be the 4th to outnumber the Bears. But on this play, when this linebacker blitzes, he's going to end up to the left of center. So he's going to get stuck to the backside. So here we see the center is able to get position on that linebacker. That means that Washington's going to be outnumbered to the play side. And so Cal's going to be able to hit that outside lane for a nice gain. Looks routine, but schematically, we're going to see this coming back. Cal running this tight zone play toward the tight end. Okay, so that was all I wanted to say about that. Let's go to 5:24 in the third. Keep checking out what's interesting about these scoring drives for the Bears. All right, this one I think the broadcast came in a little bit late too. But, okay, good. Okay, let me watch this live just so I remember. Okay, so this is a similar kind of deal. So if I pause it right here, we're seeing, once again, Cal's got a tight end to the left side of the formation. Once again, they're running toward that tight end. So they're running this tight zone play. This time they're doing it out of tray. So there's a tight end and 2 receivers. It's not a 2x2 set, it's a 3x1, but they're still running tight zone. They're still running a zone read toward that tight end. This is a true zone read, I believe. So here, maybe. There's an RPO component here too. But so Garbers is reading this. They're leaving the backside end unblocked. Might be reading this linebacker instead of the defensive end. But anyway, there's both a zone component and a passing component here. I think this was a zone read. I think that Garbers was probably aware of what that edge player was doing. Okay, but once again, Cal's running tight zone. They're getting numbers. That's allowing them to hit that play side lane. Okay. So that's the theme. Cal's got 3 blockers to the left of center, including that tight end. Washington's got 4 defenders. Once again, we're going to see one of these players. Yeah, that play side linebacker is again going to fall backside. That's what gives up numbers. That's what lets Cal's running back get through a play side gap. So just to recap that, Washington's got 4 play side defenders to outnumber Cal's 3 blockers. But when this linebacker falls backside, it makes the Bears 3-on-3 to the left of center. And that's what opens up this gap in the A gap. Okay, so we're seeing a theme here as Cal's moving the ball, moving the ball, moving the ball. This is going to be critical because of the counter that's going to come off. Yeah. Bryant makes the tackle, but or he doesn't make the tackle. He falls in and, making defensive backs tackle in the box. If you can get that, you're in good shape. There's some good quotes out there about that. Yeah, and once again, it's all because this linebacker falls backside. He shouldn't be. He should not end up to the right of the center. That's what gives up numbers. Great running lane. Horrible missed tackle. Good eyes on that play. Okay, let's jump down to what I just watched, 5:08. We're going to see how Cal keeps moving the ball. I think I probably labeled this as 5:13. Yeah. Okay, let me remind myself of what's important here. Oh, okay. So another piece of the puzzle in this game was Garbers. I think there was a point where he'd rushed the ball more times than he had thrown a forward pass. Not just because of zone read stuff, but also because of scrambles, which we're going to see right here. He completed like 11 passes in this game, which is absurd. And here we're going to see what his game looked like and what he brought to the game. So on this play, we've talked before about Washington's stand-up end here, about this edge defender. We saw a run play where he jumped down inside, and that was part of a series of things that let Cal get their running back outside on the edge. So here we're going to see in the pass rush, he's also going to jump down inside. So watch as he goes. Okay, there's number 9. He jumps down inside. Okay, that's going to be the thing that lets Garbers get outside on the edge. Now, I think, once again, I don't believe that he's made a mistake here. A good concept or a good opposition to think about for thinking about the pass rush is the difference between a contain rush and what's called a two-way go. So a contain rush is when you don't have anybody outside of you, and so you have to take the tackle's outside gap and keep the quarterback in the pocket. That's a contain rush. You can't go wherever you want. You've got to stay outside the tackle and keep the pocket closed. On this play, that doesn't seem to be what number 9's doing, because he starts out outside, but then he comes down inside. So what you would call this is, if you're not a contain rusher, well, what's another kind of rush you could have? You could have what's called a two-way go. So a two-way go says, we've got someone to help you on the outside. You don't have to contain, so you can attack this left tackle, and you can make whatever move you need to make to beat him. So I think that's what we're seeing from 9 here. I think he's got a two-way go. He starts outside, comes down inside. And that's the thing that opens up the edge for Garbers. Okay, so if 9 is not making a mistake here, why is it that he has a two-way go? What schematically allows him to have that two-way go instead of being part of a contain rush? The answer is Washington here is playing zone. Okay, and they've got this linebacker dropping to play curl to flat at the bottom of the screen. So if this guy has a two-way go, it's because he knows that he's got this zone dropping linebacker, and so he's going to be able to rally to any quarterback run. So if nobody made a mistake on this play, then that's what the logic is. Okay, so the problem with that is that on this play, Cal is check releasing their running back here. And so he's running out to the flat. And at that point, Cal has put this linebacker in conflict, because now he has to choose between running with this running back or sitting inside on the quarterback. So when number 9 comes down, this guy's stuck between two options. And what's more, when Garbers does decide to keep it, all of a sudden the running back who'd been running that route, he can now become a blocker and block that linebacker. So Washington's actually getting outnumbered a little bit here from a run perspective. Even though this is a passing play, the quarterback turns into a ball carrier, and Washington's kind of not maintaining the run fits that they would need to maintain to keep Garbers from getting this gain. So Washington having some trouble with run fits, having some trouble maintaining their structure on the edge in the pass rush here. So that was another important piece of this puzzle. Let's jump down to 3:22. This was a nice long drive for the Bears. 3:22 in the third. Okay, so what are we going to see here? Okay. All right, so let's watch this full speed just to see what's happening. Oh, yeah, this play. Okay, there's Chris Brown, by the way, Cal's other running back, running through arm tackles, plowing over a safety. So that's that more physical run style that 34 brings to the game. So what I want to point out here again, okay, is let's take a look at Cal's formation. Okay, we're seeing ace. They've flipped it here, so the tight end's off the line. But we've got that tight end lined up to the left side of the formation. What's Cal been running up to this point? They've been running tight zone, right? They've been running zone reads toward that tight end. Okay, so what does that mean? That means that the quarterback is reading a backside edge defender and holding a backside edge defender with his read. So what's the trend? What's the tendency? Cal runs tight zone. Cal runs tight zone. Quarterback reads the split side edge defender. Okay. So on this play, Washington is making an adjustment to try and take that away. So what they're doing to try and prevent Cal from getting these nice zone runs to the left is Washington is blitzing this defensive back off the edge. I believe he's the blitzer. Let me double check that. Yeah, they're blitzing this defensive back off the edge. That would be the guy that the quarterback is reading on the zone read. So ideally for Washington, when the quarterback sees that guy crashing down, as he's going to do, that'll give the quarterback... Actually, that guy just gets locked up. So they're bringing this defensive back down to play like an outside linebacker. Sorry about that. He's now playing as a de facto outside linebacker in a 3-4 alignment. And then Washington's blitzing this second defensive back. So the idea is that this blitzer, they're blitzing the zone read, basically. They're blitzing the quarterback keeper in a sense, because they're expecting Cal to run tight zone. They're expecting the zone read to be happening on the backside. So they're bringing a defensive back in as an extra backside number, and then they're blitzing at the quarterback on the keeper. So that's what we're seeing right here. Now, the difference is that on this play, Cal is not running tight zone. On this play, Cal is running split zone. So they've changed up their tendency. They're attacking back in the opposite direction from the same formation. By the way, that's why Cal's in the pistol here. On previous plays, they've been in the shotgun, setting the running back away from the tight end so that he could run toward him. Now Cal's going to change that. They disguise that by lining up in the pistol. Okay, so backfield trying to disguise tendencies. Here we're going to see Cal step toward the split side. So here, look at the offensive line, everybody releasing to the right instead of toward that tight end. What that means is that when this blitzer attacks the quarterback, remember he's blitzing the zone read. When that blitzer attacks the quarterback, he's going to get too far downfield. That's going to let 34 come underneath of him and hit that play side lane. Okay, so once again, this doesn't look very different from the other plays that we've seen. What's the critical difference? Cal's running split zone to take advantage of Washington running this blitz at the zone read. They're running split zone instead of tight zone. Once again, in terms of matchups, this guy who came in as a defensive back, came into the box to play like an outside linebacker, he gets locked up with the right tackle, who's able to control that guy and push him downfield, creating that play side edge. Wide receiver cracks back, and the running back's able to run through some arm tackles for a huge gain. So that split zone, tight zone distinction, using the pistol to disguise it, this is the kind of stuff that gets me like pumped up about football scheme. It's so subtle but super interesting. All right, so that sets up Cal's next touchdown, which happened at 58 seconds in the third. Let's see here. All right, let me go back to the start here. Okay, this comes in a little bit late again. What are the major themes that we've seen? Playing within the structure of the defense. Oh, let me go back and check that out. 322. Okay, we're talking about number 13. Let me see where that guy is. Oh, okay, great question. So what's happening with 13 is it's all about this safety on the hash. So Washington, if we go back to the initial pre-snap look as early as possible, it looks like Washington's in a single high coverage. We've mentioned that they do that a lot, right? It looks like this guy's a free safety playing in the middle of the field. When Washington brings this defensive back in as a de facto outside linebacker, when they blitz this defensive back, okay, they're losing 1-2 coverage defenders here. So they're taking this guy and they're putting him on the hash in kind of a very deep cover 2 alignment. Okay, so here's the DB playing as an outside linebacker. Here's the blitzer. Here's that safety working over the top of the Twins receivers as a deep half player. Okay, so what this linebacker, number 13, has to do, because he's losing all these defensive backs out on the edge, he's dropping out to play as the inside man in cover 2. So he's dropping out as an RPO defender. If this receiver runs a slant on an RPO, he's got to be the guy that picks that up because all the other defensive backs are involved in the run fit. So that's how he fits into this scheme. He becomes the inside man in a cover 2 coverage triangle. Nice question. So that's why it looks like he's not really out there. When he drops out to cut inside breaking routes by this slot receiver, that just sets him up to get cracked. So here that slot receiver cracks back on him. He doesn't defeat the block, but he does have tough leverage just schematically. And so that's what's going on with 13. I love that question. Okay, 58 in the third. All right. This is a place where Washington's going to see their backside contain issue become a problem again. This time they're going to give up a touchdown off of it. So here Cal's running power to the right. We're coming in a little bit after the snap, but 73 is the left guard, and he's pulling to the right to set up a power play like we've been talking about throughout. Cal's right tackle actually gets smoked here. He should have pinned down that defensive lineman, but he gets absolutely destroyed. You can see the right tackle right here trying to come down on that defensive lineman. He gets no obstruction at all. That guy runs into the puller. This play might have been a disaster if the running back wouldn't have cut back here. Okay, but here, who's the problem with backside contain? Well, number 9's been a problem with backside contain, either because of the scheme or because he's making mistakes. It's kind of hard to say. So we're going to keep an eye on number 9 now as he jumps down inside to chase the running back. Takes a horrible angle. Running back gets outside him. He's given up contain at this point. And the quarterback's going to get a nice block there to open up the edge and let the running back get into the end zone. But the problem here, this is a case where Cal's blocking scheme worked horribly. It didn't do at all what it was supposed to do. But because this backside outside linebacker gets sucked down, takes a bad angle at the running back, Cal's able to bounce this thing outside to where it's in no way designed to go. And they get into the end zone for a touchdown. And that made it 17-13. That's Cal's first lead of the game, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, let's look a little bit. Let's see some good stuff for Washington. Cal ended up winning and had most of the offense in the second half, but I don't want to shut the Huskies out completely. Let's check out 14 minutes in the fourth and see a nice passing play that they're running right here. This play is going to do a very nice job. Garber's leveling a block with his throwing shoulder. I wonder what his coach had to say about that. That's another one of those underrated, probably game-saving plays. Who knows if Cal would have gotten in the end zone without that block. But you don't want to make it a habit. Okay, so 14 in the fourth quarter. Now we're getting Washington. They keep kicking these field goals. They keep getting down the field with plays kind of like this. This is a nice little sneak play to this fullback out of the backfield. I love the scheme here. So the theme that we've seen throughout here is that Cal likes to play a lot of zone, maybe a lot of cover three. Here they've got what looks like a cover three cornerback playing deep and outside. So what Washington's going to do is they're going to take their tight end here and run him vertical. That's going to pull off this cornerback and pull him deep. And then they're just going to run their fullback out into the flat underneath that route. So a really nice job of attacking Cal's zone structure here. This is a good play in an obvious run situation, 3rd and 2. That definitely played a role as well. If we go back and look at who should have been covering this fullback, it's probably this safety who's rolled down toward the tight end here. If we watch the safety right here, he's definitely expecting run. Watch how he attacks the line of scrimmage. Right, he attacks the line. Here, he quickly realizes he's made a mistake and starts bailing out, but it's a little bit too late because that fullback's able to outflank him. Unbalanced line. Yes, you're talking about the 14 minutes in the fourth play here? Yeah, so, this is an unbalanced line. So the tight end that I'm talking about who's going to pull that cornerback, that tight end is lined up where a tackle would traditionally be lined up, and then the right tackle is brought over to the other side of the formation. I don't know if Cal was fooled by it here. I think that if this safety wouldn't have attacked the line of scrimmage, that he would have been the curl flat defender and he would have taken that fullback. So I don't think Cal's necessarily fooled by the unbalanced line here, but it is a nice wrinkle because this safety, once he starts bailing out, he's just a little bit late he's kind of lost. His eyes aren't in the right place, and he lets that fullback get out into the flat. Nice. Yeah, a lot of unbalanced formations in this game. Huge part of it. So when they pulled the tackle over here, he's an ineligible receiver, but it doesn't matter because he's a tackle. This receiver out here on the edge is still eligible. So this is a creative way to use an unbalanced formation to try and create some confusion in the passing game. Really cool stuff. All right. So Washington, I believe they went down and got a field goal on that drive. We're going to look at one more field goal drive for Washington because they took the lead. Cal was up. Washington kicked a field goal. They were still down. But the Huskies ended up retaking the lead at 19-17, if I'm not mistaken. So we're going to go to 4:59 in the fourth now to see how the Huskies were able to set up the go-ahead field goal, because this is where it starts getting exciting. Okay. Let me remind myself of this play. Okay, awesome. So this is kind of classic for what happened in the second half. I decided to save all the second half themes for this drive because it was the same kind of thing throughout. But this drive, you're just going to see a hard-fought game where Washington was able to get yards, but they weren't able to get lots of yards. We saw some schematic back and forth, and ultimately it ended in Washington kicking a field goal, which was the most common outcome in this game. So what we're seeing right here is before the snap, it looks like Cal's playing kind of a split safety coverage with two safeties high. Washington is running a tight zone play of their own, so they're running toward this H-back or tight end. Washington's got 3 blockers. Cal only has 3 play side defenders. Remember, if numbers are even, that means the offense wins, so Washington's thinking that they can run to the left here out of the gun. The thing that makes this play not work out for them is right at the snap, Cal spins this safety down to put him in a single high look. So here comes that safety. He gives Cal that 4th play side defender. If the running back would have hit this lane, which gets closed up anyway, so he was never going to hit that lane, but if he would have, then that safety would have filled it to limit the gain. And so Cal does a very nice job with just kind of compressing running lanes here. So if we look right here, we see a double team on the defensive tackle. He holds up reasonably well, gets some penetration, actually ends up getting to the backside here. So Cal spinning down the safety, getting numbers, and then just holding up pretty well at the point of attack and at the line of scrimmage, not letting Washington get anywhere. Okay, but Washington, not to be deterred, they're going to come back 4-16. 4-16. We're going to see Washington doing something that they were able to do throughout this game. This is actually a pretty nice read by Eason. I know he's caught some flack in this live cast up until now, but here he's going to do a nice job making a hot read, if I'm not mistaken. Let me just watch it. Yeah, okay. So Cal on this play is pulling out all the stops. It is 17-16. They really want to keep Washington off the scoreboard. Washington's about to cross the 50, so the Bears want to blitz. They don't want Washington getting, they want to get Washington off the field right now so that they can get the ball back and try to win the game. So what Cal's doing is they're blitzing their linebacker right here. They're bringing basically everybody on the pass rush, and what that's going to do is open up this massive void in the middle of the field. So let's check this out in slow-mo. Okay, here comes the blitz from that linebacker. Okay, Cal empties out the middle of the field, bringing pressure after Eason. Eason here does a nice job reading hot. He looks up. He sees that he's got that receiver on the hot route, breaking into the middle of the field. Okay, completed. Wide receiver fights for yardage. Nice execution by Cal's nickelback here, given his initial alignment, given where the scheme's putting him. Scheme's putting him off and outside, so when this route breaks shallow and inside, he's going to be in a tough spot. He does a nice job breaking on this. We've seen Cal's defenders do a good job rallying. All right, here comes Eason. Boom. On time. Gets the completion. Nickelback's right there. Could potentially stop it short of the first down, but the receiver fights it off. That's a fun play to watch. The best throw Eason made in his career. Not exactly. Yeah, so you knew what play was coming? I mean, he's got this potential, if you look throughout this game, there are some incompletions that'll kind of turn your head a little bit where the throw looks good, the timing looks good, but maybe it's dropped or something, or a defensive back makes a great play. Like, I see what scouts saw when they scouted Eason. This play's a good example. But yeah, then there, he's not 100% polished yet, though, for sure. Great throw on time. Great fight by the wide receiver. Good stuff there. Just frustrating Cal fans barely staying alive on 3rd and 8. All right, so good. Okay, so what forced the field goal here? I've given a lot of credit to Cal's defensive backs. We're going to see that in flying colors right here. So on this play, Washington's trying to set up a screen. They're motioning number 5 across. They're going to try to set up a screen to this guy who's now the number 2 receiver. And this is kind of incredible here. We're going to watch Cal's nickelback right here, who graduated. He's been a mainstay of this secondary for forever. And you can see why right here. He sees this guy motion across. He recognizes exactly what's coming. And he's just going to jump directly into the path of this screen. So there he goes. He beats his blocker into the backfield to get in front of where Eason wants to throw the ball. That forces Eason to kind of panic and scramble out a little bit. And he ends up sliding, forcing a 3rd and long that they can't come back from. They end up having to kick a field goal. But one more time, just watch the quick trigger of this guy once he recognizes that the screen's coming. Washington's trying to take this number 3 receiver and kick him out, opening up the inside lane for the screen up to this safety. I believe that's a safety, but just incredible instincts or recognition by that nickelback. Is that Beck? I think that's Travion Beck. Let me see here. Yeah, that's Beck, who's gotten a lot of great interceptions, reading plays just like this from that nickel spot. Really nice play to set up a field goal instead of a touchdown, which made a huge difference here. All right, so now if you're a Cal fan, this is where it gets good. If you're a Washington fan, this is where it gets kind of sad. We're now going to go to 1:34 in the 4th quarter here. Okay, so this play comes in a little bit late, but we can reconstruct it. It's not a huge deal. Early in the game, I showed that one of the ways that Cal was trying to attack Washington's single high coverages, trying to attack these press corners, was with the fade down the sidelines. It didn't work the whole game. They didn't even come close to completing one until this final drive. So right here, you can see Garbers is just thrown the ball. He's targeting this receiver up at the top of the screen, who's facing a pretty tight press from Washington's cornerback. And for the first time the whole game, Cal's able to get that completion with a very nice catch by Jordan Duncan. So if Cal had to get one of these, they picked a good time for it to start. Just absolutely fantastic play, getting them across the 50, and ultimately setting up the game-winning field goal. They tried to come back to it on the next play. So if we go to 131 in the fourth, we might be able to see a little bit more. All right, the Bears come back. This is a different passing concept. It's not identical, but it's the same matchup. It's Duncan up here at the top of the screen with a press corner. They're trying to go back the same way. It's not going to work, but they are going to draw a defensive pass interference, which always helps when you're trying to move down the ball down the field in chunks. There's Garbers, hit it last time, wants to go for it again. Wide receiver gets caught up, incomplete. He wants a flag and he gets it. All right. Two plays, moving them down the field in chunks, one completed, one drawing a pass interference, and that's going to set up the final play to get Cal within field goal range. That's the fourth quarter with 1:25 to go. Let's pull this up right here. Let me remind myself what's happening. Okay, fantastic. So the game situation here is absolutely critical. Notice it's 1st and 10. We're at the fourth quarter, 1:25 to go. So Washington might not get the ball back, and they have a 2-point lead. Okay, so what's the most important thing they need to do situationally? They need to stop Cal from getting any more yards. Cal's at the 30, not automatic for Cal's field goal kicker. Washington at this point is selling out because every yard matters when it comes to Cal being able to kick this game-winning field goal. So Washington's going to do something here that they never did off the goal line. They never did this, as far as I remember, in between the 20s. So that is, they're going to bring a cover zero blitz. So right now it looks like they're playing their single high coverage with that safety in the middle, but we're going to see as we get closer to the snap, all these guys are blitzing. All the linebackers, this defensive back on the outside are all blitzing. This safety is slinging over to pick up the slot receiver. Okay, so that puts Washington in cover zero. Okay, because they want to bring all this pressure. They need to get Cal moving backwards if they can. Because of the game situation. So what's Cal doing? They've got a fantastic call in place to beat this. They're running a little kind of hitch or a hook to this outside receiver right here. Why is that going to work against cover zero? Okay, well, in cover zero, these two defensive backs are manned up on these two receivers with no safety over the top. Oh, I'm going to come back to that cut block for sure. So we've got two defensive backs over two. Oh, man, yeah, look at that. Good catch. Yeah. So Cal's running a hitch to this outside receiver, and they're running this inside receiver kind of on an out. But what that's really going to do is it's going to set him up to be a blocker. Unless Cal's thinking they're setting up a pick here, that guy's probably not a primary receiver here. So this is cover zero. It's man coverage on the outside. Okay. Notice that when this guy runs his out, he's got a man defender who's got to run with him. So that pulls that guy outside chasing that route, okay? The other defensive back is just off screen up here. This guy's running out toward the sidelines with his man. The ball gets caught, okay? This guy's momentum is carrying him out to the sidelines. This guy's playing off, and what that's going to do with no safety over the top is it's going to open up an inside lane for number 11 to get downfield and get the Bears into an easy chip shot field goal range. So really good play call against this cover zero blitz. Garbers does a nice job reading it. He probably already knows what's coming. I would guess that he's expecting this blitz based on the alignment of this safety, based on the way this cornerback's playing. Notice that Washington's been pressing a lot this whole game. All of a sudden, these defensive backs are pulling back. They're playing at the sticks. So there are a lot of alignment cues that are probably suggesting to Garbers that this safety won't be in the middle of the field. So he probably makes a nice pre-snap read here because, yeah, he catches it, looks out, throws it. The receiver's able to get back inside with no safety over the top, setting up the easy chip shot field goal for the Bears to win 20-19. with a nice cut block from Brown, who had a good game. Brown had a much better game than I gave him credit for. He had a lot of gains in the 5 to 6 yard range that weren't like huge schematic features. They're interesting talking about from X's and O's. They didn't show particularly great execution by the blockers or great tackling by the defense, so I left a lot of those out. Brown had 80 yards in this game, but they were a good 80 yards, I have to say. He made a lot of things happen. And so here he makes that cut block on that defensive end or stand-up end on the edge. And Cal's able to get in position for the chip shot field goal to win the game. All right, that's it. Thank you to everybody who's been in here. This has been a ton of fun. The replay will be up. And yeah, I'll be back next week. I don't know what game I'm going to do. Oh, I think I'm going to look at one of USC's games. I think I'm going to look at USC BYU. I might do 2 USC games to kind of compare why they struggled so much against BYU and then why they turned it around and did so well against Utah. Am I able to pull up a play? And yes, I am able. I got the full game up. What play would you like to see? Do you have a timestamp? I could also probably find it. Let's see. Could you go back to the third quarter, 12 minutes and about 40 seconds, the 1st and 10 before the 2nd and 10 touchdown? Could you evaluate Garber's decision making? Okay, cool. So third quarter, 12 minutes and 40 seconds or so. Let's pull up this. Okay, third quarter, 12 minutes and 40. I like this football freestyle. This is the 1st and 10 play, but before the. Is it the 1st and 10 before this one, or is it the next one? Actually, let me go to my notes. I could probably figure it out as well. So Cal O versus Washington D. We've got roughly 12 minutes in the third quarter. 1st and 10 play. Are you talking about the stick draw play, or are you talking about the drop back pass? There's one that's like a quarterback draw RPO. Next play. Okay, cool. Okay, here we go. Let's take a look and see what we got. I'm also going to review my notes and see what I said about this originally. Okay, cool. I've read my notes. Let's watch it just to see what we're working with. But immediately at the snap, we're seeing Washington in a single high look. So we're thinking either a really tight matchup kind of cover 3 deal, like a man zone combo, or maybe a true cover 1. All right, so what's going on here? What's he looking? Okay, so Cal is trying to run a shoot concept. So they got the outside receiver coming back inside on a slant, releasing the running back out to the flat. There's man coverage. The receiver gets caught up. So I don't think he's initially looking to the bottom of the screen. He doesn't like what he sees. Okay, what's going on at the top? Gotcha. Okay, I think that this is a classic Beau Baldwin passing play call in the sense that it doesn't do a ton to open up things for the quarterback. Are you thinking that he should have thrown to the number 3 receiver up here at the top of the screen with all those blitzers coming? Because I think that that's probably his best shot. The leverage is interesting to me here because, it looks like this defensive back might be sitting on something inside. I would say his best shot was to throw to the number 3 receiver with quick timing, just right there, bang it right in there. He could maybe have the out up at the top of the screen, but that's a long throw. He doesn't usually make those long throws out to the flat like that from the far hash. Yeah, I mean, I think that the concept's bad. I think maybe they're trying to create a pick here on the outside, and I think he's probably okay. So in terms of coverage, I think he's probably reading this correctly as cover one, because he's seeing this linebacker flying out to carry the running back. I think that's probably what he's seeing. Doesn't get the greatest snap. I think he's reading this as cover one, and what he's thinking is that he's going to get a pick on that linebacker. So he's thinking when this outside receiver runs a slant, he's going to pick that linebacker, and he's going to be able to hit the running back in the flat, although he is kind of eyeing up the safety here. It's kind of curious. My guess is he thinks he's going to get a pick, but he's not really looking out there, so I'm not sure what he is looking at. Maybe the running back could convert to a wheel. That'd be an interesting option. So maybe he'd be reading the safety because of that. But yeah, I mean, his best bet here is just to drill it in immediately to that number 3 receiver with the blitz coming. I also think that Cal could be giving that guy more of a hot route. I don't know to what extent they have their receivers read coverage. When I see something like this, my guess is that they're not having them read very much, because that guy's just standing still. If he saw the blitz and worked inside more across into the middle of the field, then that'd be an even better option, and maybe he could get him for a touchdown. But it looks like Cal's just having him on a fixed little hook there. I don't know. I don't think it's a great play call, but that would have been where he had to go. I definitely agree with you there. I have a hard time evaluating Garbers because he's been operating. Yeah, agree. Garbers has a lot of work to do when it comes to reads in the passing game, but I think that with better quarterback tutoring, he will get significantly better. There are some plays, or there were some games where he was kind of set up for success by the coverages that the defense ran, and some stuff that was on tape that suggested that those defenses might be easy to exploit. I think Garbers just hasn't gotten the play calling and the quarterback tutoring that he needs. Maybe partially the play calling issues connected to the offensive line, but it's definitely not always the case. I think it's TBD. We need to see what he looks like under Musgrave. If it's entirely possible that he's just going to take off like a rocket with Musgrave's tutoring him, but he hasn't put on tape elite skills, I would not say. Even in the games where he's had a really good game, I think it's more a function of the defense's coverage and the way that they play, as opposed to anything truly outstanding that he's doing. But he's still young, so there's time. That's kind of my rambling take. Okay, cool. Any other questions or comments? I know some Cal fans might be jumping over to the simulated TCU game at Right for Cal. I would strongly recommend that. If you haven't checked out my Patreon page, I do all sorts of breakdowns from around the conference, like play studies and things like that. So if you want more football, you can find that at patreon.com/Burke18. You can find the link to that on my Twitter. I've also got a Scheme 101 video course, which is 14 videos. They're all like 15 to 30 minutes long. They teach you coverage in the passing game from the ground up. So if you want to learn more about the X's and O's, you can get that on my Patreon page as well. So there's my shameless plug. The Ole Miss game would be an example. Good. Yeah. Thank you for everybody who stopped by. This is so much fun. I love that people actually show up to like just talk about football for 2 hours on a Saturday. This is fantastic. So the Ole Miss game would be a good example of Garbers maybe working well against the cover. Yeah. Ole Miss, he was able to hit some RPO stuff that was pretty